Good day. I'm today going to be talking about the judiciary, but only a small segment of it, a particular special view of how we look at judges. In your module, you'll have some discussion of this, but also in most books or in most discussions among politicians, you'll hear about conservative justices, or you hear about liberal justices, or you hear about justices that are activists or justices that are not activists. I find at times these are useful, but Cass Sunstein provided an alternative in a book he calls Radicals and Rogues. It's not a very good title because he actually doesn't look at just one side. He kind of looks at it from multiple sides. He provides four categories of jurists that I think are very valuable to think about. And they're reflected somewhat in some of our current jurists and some of our past jurists. And the jurists aren't just strictly, I mean, they overlap a little bit with conservative versus activists and all that kind of, substance, but he gets a little bit more on it. Now, to be honest, he's updated these, and I'm using the originals, not the updated ones, but I think they're very, very useful. The thing to watch is do not try to put alternative definitions on his categories or positive or negative categorizations on it. What he's trying to do is be descriptive. Now, the first category he talked about was fundamentalists. By this, we're not talking about religious fundamentalists. We are talking about jurists that believe they know what the founders meant when they wrote the Constitution. They believe it is a good document. And they believe that if you want to change anything, you have to do it through constitutional amendment. Now, they're not perfectly on this. I mean, most certainly, there's some difficulties with their position. One is that the people who wrote the Constitution weren't the ones that ratified it. The ones that ratified it were in 13 separate constitutional conventions. In addition, sometimes they seem to leave that constitutional strictness when convenient. For example, the Supreme Court was the institution that found corporations to be legal persons, and in 2008, legal political persons. I don't think the founding fathers would have agreed with that at all. But to some degree, there's some validity to their position. It is hard to do our Constitution, change it, amend it in any fashion, but there's some argument that fundamentalists have that are valid. And we all are fundamentalists somewhere. There's nothing you can do to convince me that discrimination is good. I just don't believe in it. I think that even if I act in a discriminatory fashion by accident, it is wrong. I believe that people should treat each other with respect. And you can try to convince me that I'm wrong, but I'm pretty fundamentalist about it. And I think most of us have these certain kinds of standards that are very fundamentalistic. And I can understand the idea is you want to stick to something that's valid, something you know, and you do not change randomly. The second category he listed was perfectionist. Now, what is a perfectionist? A perfectionist, just like fundamentalist, believes the Constitution is a good document. They also believe they understood what the founders meant, and with all the flaws that go with that. But they also believe that it's perfectible. In other words, just because the Constitution did not say that you have a right of privacy doesn't mean that you don't, and the role of the court is to make sure that you do have that right to privacy. The danger with this, of course, is that, again, just 9 people are deciding what is your right and what is not your right. There is still the assumption that possibly, they know more than what others know. Then the other two categories probably fall more in what we call the non-activist category, but only to a degree. One is called majoritarian. Now, majoritarian, it's not that he believes that the court should make a majority. He basically says that we live in a democracy. If you live in a democracy, you live by majoritarian rule. If you want to overrule that, you should do so very, very cautiously. Now, understand that all judges, all these, are very concerned about providing justice to those who are in front of them. But a majoritarian might say, to a degree, as did one of our famous jurists who was never on the Supreme Court, Oliver Wendell Holmes, damn it, the people have a right to be wrong. It's a democracy. And so they're hesitant to overrule legislatures, particularly, pass legal documents from states or the federal government. The last category is minimalist. Now, minimalist basically has a much more subdued opinion about their own wisdom. Instead of wanting to make sweeping decisions, they're much, much more inclined to say, let's make a decision for this case. Let's not make it sweeping. Let's let other people go to court, other judges making other decisions, and maybe we'll get collective wisdom that is greater than what I can provide myself personally, or this court can provide. Now, there's a problem with this position too, as there is with all of them. Majoritarian and the majority can act in an immoral fashion. If you do a minimalist decision, it means that more and more people have to go to court. And yes, maybe the result will be greater wisdom, but it will also be conceivably a lot of hardship on a lot of people. How does this play out in some kinds of issues? For example, one that was just made was the decision to say that you cannot fire a person just because they're gay. Well, that I think is a decision I would agree with, but then again, that's my position. If it is said in this particular case, that law which they passed was unfair to this person, well, that would have been a minimalist decision. A majoritarian decision might have been, maybe it's better to let the majorities come around to find out what is correct. Yet he gave us a very interesting example. I think that Cass personally supports the right of a woman to have an abortion, but he doesn't like Roe versus Wade. Why doesn't he like Roe versus Wade? And the reason is clear. The judges stepped in and divided the country by making a sweeping decision. They decided that a woman had a right to an abortion, even though the public was not necessarily there at the time. The perfectionist decisions, were successful, such as the Brown versus Board of Education, which eliminated segregation in schools and other places. But this one has had another effect. Donald Trump was elected to a very large degree because of a decision that had been made more than 45 years earlier. Roe versus Wade. Should the court be in a position to make decisions that will be affecting elections for a quarter century or more later? And Cass's argument was, no, they should be more cautious. I have to admit, I've always admired the perfectionists. Earl Warren is one of my heroes. Thurgood Marshall, another one. These are, in my opinion, great leaders. But I now understand to a degree how you can be a really great leader, have good moral intent, and possibly make a decision that is not useful down the road for America. Thank you very much. Consider these as you think about decisions coming down from the Supreme Court over the next few months. And I hope that it gives you some understanding of the difficulty that may be confronting some of our justices, both at the district level, but most certainly at the Supreme Court level. Thank you and goodbye.